What's good, YouTube? Welcome back. Today is LazyDaze Tubby and I'm back at it again on my solo channel, and I am doing some more history reaction for you guys today, and it is some more WarHawks content for you. It is their series The American Civil War, and it is their episode The Battle of Fort Henry. I'm really looking forward to finding out what they got in store for me today. They make amazing content, great storytelling, great maps, and I'm really enjoying finding out some more about the American history, because of course I am British, so I don't know too much about it. If you haven't already, please head over to their page. The link's in the description box down below. If you're enjoying my reactions and look forward to future reactions, you know what you need to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, but we're going to jump straight into this one. Oh, really?
As the calendar had rolled over from 1861 to 1862, both Union and Confederacy were preparing for what they both expected would be the pivotal year of the Civil War. 19 days into the new year, and the Union had already won the first significant battle of 1862, the Battle of Mill Springs in eastern Kentucky.
Okay.
Yet, this battle is too far away to have any direct impact on the centerpiece of the Western theater, the Mississippi Valley, or to help local Unionists being bitterly persecuted in eastern Tennessee. In the winter of 1861, the Union armies in the West experienced a significant shift in command structure, replacing Major General John C. Fremont as Senior Commander General of the Department of the Missouri was Major General Henry Wager Halleck, a prominent political general with high connections in Washington.
All right.
From his headquarters in St. Louis, Missouri, General Halleck commands a Union army of roughly 70 to 80,000 men in strength.
That's
To
large.
the east, Major General Don Carlos Buell's 50,000-man Army of the Ohio is headquartered at Louisville, Kentucky. The boundary between these two armies' jurisdiction as it enters Confederate territory is the Cumberland River. In the early months of 1862, the Union strategy in the Western theater shifted from pitched battles to control over the key waterways in the West, such as the Tennessee, Ohio, and Cumberland rivers, as well as the mighty Mississippi. Simultaneous river and overland movement would provide Union armies with multiple opportunities to breach Confederate defenses further south. Yet, the biggest question at this time is how to requisite a proper riverine force of gunboats and transports, a question that proves challenging to Union commanders in the theater. Notwithstanding the U.S. Navy's preference for war at sea, Secretary of the Navy Gideon Welles sends officers to the western rivers to construct and organize a proper gunboat flotilla. This Brownwater Navy, as it was called, is fundamental to reopening the Mississippi and its tributaries, including the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. But it will take months of patient preparation and coordination between the armed services, as well as cooperation with local shipbuilding industries to produce the requisite force.
Which is fair enough.
The Union Army, jealous and distrustful of intrusions into its affairs, attempts to build its own riverine fleet. But veteran sailors such as John Rodgers, Andrew Hull Foote, and Henry Walk persevere. They develop close ties with General Halleck and the arming soldiers, and engage in shipbuilding interests from Cairo and DeKalb in Illinois, Mound City in Missouri, and other river towns to build new vessels or convert available rivercraft for combat. Inventor and engineer James B. Fadds of St. Louis is contracted to fabricate what will become known as the Western Flotilla of ironclad gunboats.
That looks sick.
These vessels are fitted with heavy iron plating intended to absorb or even deflect incoming enemy artillery shells. Army camps are scoured for gunboat volunteers. National arsenals dispatch heavy shipboard ordnance, and shore-based service and supply facilities are created to support the Union Navy on inland waters. All of this preparation takes time, however, and delay Major Generals Halleck and Buell from launching their great advance southward.
It's crazy what we achieve when we're in need of inventing something.
To make matters worse, Halleck
we're in
and
need
other
of it.
Union Army generals in the Western Theater are beginning to come under pressure from President Lincoln, who urges them to launch a general offensive by George Washington's birthday on February 22nd. Enter Brigadier General Ulysses S. Grant, commanding general of the Union Army's District of Cairo. In January of 1862, General Grant, displaying personal initiative that would later characterize his career, approaches General Halleck at his headquarters in St. Louis to propose a bold strategy to seize control over the upper Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. In cooperation with Union Navy Flag Officer Andrew H. Foote, General Grant will transport his command upriver from Cairo to seize the strategically important Confederate strongholds of Forts Henry and Donelson, located on the Tennessee and Cumberland, respectively. Confederate General Albert Sidney Johnston, commander of the Army of Central Kentucky, had realized that his forces are too thinly stretched over a wide defensive line. Johnston's left flank was defended by Major General Leonidas Polk with his 12,000-man force centered in Columbus, Kentucky. His right flank is guarded by Brigadier General Simon Bolivar Buckner in Bowling Green, Kentucky, leading 4,000 men. The center of the Army of Central Kentucky's lines consist of Forts Henry and Donelson under the command of Brigadier General Lloyd Tillman, also with 4,000 men. These two strongholds are the only two defensive positions guarding the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. If these rivers were to open up to Union military traffic, it would open two direct invasion paths into Tennessee and beyond. Brigadier General
Wow, and there's not that many to defend it as well.
Grant realizes this precarious situation for the Confederates, but his proposal is initially rejected by Major General Halleck, who dismisses the idea since he is aware of Grant's reputation for drinking in his past career with the Army. It takes the intervention of the older and more respected Flag Officer Foote to convince Halleck that the idea of a joint Army-Navy expedition up the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers in midwinter might produce results, and that Grant should be the man to lead it. Finally, Halleck relents and unleashes these two commanders against the rebels. Since the Western Flotilla belonged to the Army at that time, Flag Officer Foote was ready to team up with Grant to make the expedition a success. It was Foote's mature and confident manner that had won over the skeptical Halleck. General Halleck's main task soon becomes to provide support to this pair, as well
Thank God for Foote.
as to secure General Buell's cooperation to pin down the enemy from reinforcing the threatened point on the Twin Rivers. The news that the Confederate General P.G.T. Beauregard, the hero of Fort Sumter in the Battle of Manassas, was en route to the Western Theater with 15 regiments of reinforcements for General Johnston, may have also helped convince Halleck of the necessity of a quick action against the Confederates. General Halleck approves the Grant-Foote expedition plan on January 30th, 1862. The news of his decision hits Grant's Cairo headquarters like a thunderbolt. Brigadier General Grant and his staff quickly spring into action, making the necessary preparations for the expedition. Finally, on February 3rd, 9 transport boats carrying some 15,000 troops, animals, supplies, and artillery batteries slip away from their mooring at Cairo and steam slowly upstream against the rain-swollen current of the Ohio River, picking up Flag Officer Foote's escort of 4 ironclad and 3 timberclad gunboats. The flotilla reaches Paducah, Kentucky, and then turns southward up the Tennessee River, slowly making their way past random cabins and farms and occasional friendly inhabitant waving a handkerchief or Union flag. The column aims at establishing base camp just out of range of Fort Henry's guns.
We're gonna sit our big dick here, and what are you gonna do about it?
Many of Grant's units in the expedition had participated in his very wet and unpleasant reconnaissance in western Kentucky behind Columbus in mid-January. Untested in battle, these men are still eager to close with the enemy and to have a chance to capture the forts and secessionist property. An Illinois officer boasts to his wife that he expects to float up the Tennessee and capture the 2 forts before breakfast. Meanwhile, the Navy would scout the Confederate position. The force converging on Fort Henry consists of 2 divisions. The first is commanded by another Illinois officer, the politically connected Brigadier General John B. McClernand. The second is led by Brigadier General Charles F. Smith, a stern regular Army officer who had been Grant's cadet commander at West Point. Scattered throughout the land force are other notables, the Illinois officer John A. Blackjack Logan and Indiana native Lewis Lew Wallace, as well as a smattering of West Pointers and other experienced militia officers. But mostly, Grant's force is a vast array of farmhands from Nebraska, clerks from Indiana, and river hands and tradesmen from Ohio and Illinois. On the gunboats served jack tars from the seagoing Navy, as well as newly minted freshwater sailors from the Army, lured by promises of no more tedious drilling or marches in the sleet and snow and easier task aboard the boats. Facing Grant's invasion force are Brigadier General Tillman's 2,800 half-sick, poorly armed, multi-attired young soldiers, drawn mostly from Tennessee but also representing Alabama.
It's going to be a slaughter, right?
Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana. Morale within Fort Henry had been high until the onset of winter, when the icy blasts and snowy interludes had chilled secessionists ardor for some of the most ardent boys from the deep South. Isolation and high incident of illness and the poor position of the fort, now half submerged underwater in the swollen Tennessee River, had dampened the spirits of others. With 2 feet of swollen river water coursing the parade grounds in Fort Henry and Fort Hyman of no use for crossfire from across the river, Brigadier General Tillman is in a tough position. He controls access to hundreds of miles of fertile river-bottom farms and plantations all the way to Musher Shoals, Alabama. Just upriver at Danville lay the major river crossing for the railroad line from Bowling Green to Memphis. The torpedo or mine obstructions in the river had been swept away or rendered impotent by the floodwaters.
Holy shit. So all these defenses are gone as well. It's going to be an easy victory for Grant and the team.
Fort Henry's powder magazines contain inferior powder, and only 11 of the 17 heavy cannon can be brought to...
And they've just got to sit in that fucking swamp area as well. And you see all these people standing out there. Like, you got to be shivering in your boots. I'm surprised they haven't, like, just handed it over now. It's a large force against them.
Bear downriver. General Tillman decides quickly to abandon Fort Hyman and concentrate his small garrison inside Fort Henry and its shallow rifle pits nearby. Eventually, he disperses his infantry to higher ground outside the main fort, both to guard the land approach to the post and to avoid the rising water. Most of the men under his command are armed with shotguns and 1812-era flintlock muskets. They lack sufficient field artillery to counter General Grant's columns.
They've got like no range either.
Grant's plan of attack calls for a combined Navy and land assault on the earthworks. General Smith would move against Fort Hyman, which the Federals do not know is unfinished and about to be abandoned, while General McClernand would march to the rear of Fort Henry and assault the outlying entrenchments, thereby closing off Tillman's retreat route. Foote would steam his riverboats directly against the heavy seacoast guns commanding the channel approach to Fort Henry. Once the scouts announce the presence of enemy soldiers and gunboats, Brigadier General Tillman sends most of his garrison overland to Fort Donelson. He knows that Fort Henry is untenable, but is determined to make a stand against the gunboats. No attempt would be made to push McClernand and Smith from their camps into the river, in spite of familiarity with the roads and creek crossings in the vicinity, where he might have...
So he just knows there's no point of attacking them, and he's willing to die for Fort Henry. It's commendable.
Have ambushed the Bluecoats as they flounder through knee-deep mud en route to the fort. General Tillman decides to concentrate on the river battle, and he does not have long to wait. The Battle of Fort Henry commences at about noon on February 6, 1862, as Flag Officer Foote's flotilla moves to the attack. Foote divides his gunboats into 2 divisions. 4 ironclads of the so-called City Series, USS Essex, Cincinnati, Carondelet, and St. Louis lead the assault. The 3 timberclads, USS Tyler, Conestoga, and Lexington, steam behind the ironclads. The Union flotilla mounts 54 guns, although only 18 bow pieces can bear on Fort Henry in such a formation. Therefore, odds are somewhat even until Foote orders his gunboat captains to close within point-blank range and simply overwhelm the fort's gunners.
It is a useless sacrifice of life, I agree.
Heavy fire from Fort Henry and the gunboats soon echo across the river flats as action opens up at 12:34 p.m. Yet, the fight proves short and unexpectedly easy for the Union side. Tillman loses
What do you mean unexpectedly easy? I thought it was going to be a slaughter straight
all but
away.
4 of his heavy guns. 2 of these cannon either explode upon firing or rendered inoperable by inexperienced gun crews. As the Federal gunboats close to within 300 yards of the fort, the carnage inside the work becomes dreadful. 21 Confederate gunners are killed or wounded by the fusillade of naval gunfire. Decapitated and armless bodies, shattered gun carriages, and dismounted cannon, as well as battered parapets, present a gruesome spectacle. Confederate engineer Captain J.A. Haywood watches the unequal fight, recording that the fort's gunners become completely exhausted, with some scarcely able to stand. All are full of bravery and spirit, and some are confident, but those who know better see that it is in vain to fight longer. Captain Haywood records how it is a useless sacrifice of life. He adds that his opinion is entertained for a full hour and a half before the fight ends.
Wow.
Still, Captain Jesse Taylor's men stick to their posts and manage to plant a shot squarely in the Essex's boiler, knocking
Can't believe they're just like sticking through it. This is crazy.
it out of action, while the Cincinnati receives 32 hits, severely damaging its smokestacks, main cabin, and small boats, and silencing 2 of its guns. But Flag Officer Foote clings tenaciously to his mission, claiming it must be victory or death. Before long, General Tillman asks for terms. Foote replies, "No sir, your surrender will be unconditional." While Grant's soldiers slog toward the fort, 2 of Foote's subordinates row through the sally port and onto the
Literally just making them absolute 100% making them. He's kind of forcing them not to surrender. You know, what's your terms? No, there's no terms. Well, why should I leave now? Why should I really leave
flooded
now?
parade ground to accept Tillman's sword. It is late in the afternoon before Grant and his land forces arrive. They have missed the retreating Confederate infantry, which has escaped to Fort Donelson as soon as the rebel stars and bars flutter from Fort Henry's flagstaff in defeat. The Federals discover the environs of the fort cluttered with abandoned cooking pots of stew and other food, and sizable quantities of quartermaster, commissary, and ordnance supplies. While on the road to Fort Donelson laid 6 abandoned cannon mired in the mud.
Really?
Stolen prisoners mingle with the elated Yankee soldiers and sailors as Union forces celebrate their first major victory of the campaign.
Okay,
Now,
boys.
Grant and Foote would shift their attention toward the more menacing stronghold on the Cumberland River, Fort Donelson.
Okay, and I assume that's where we're going next episode then. Nice. I am looking forward to finding out what happens in the next episode. Really enjoyed that. It was a bit quicker than the last one. I did think it was going to be a slaughter. Of course, the Union. Yeah, I didn't expect that battle to sort of go either way. I did say that he was going to sort of stand to the end, but obviously he did end up just surrendering with no terms, which is fair. You want to save the sort of people in. You want to save the men under you as life, do you know what I mean? So I did really enjoy that, and I'm looking forward to the next episode, and I hope you guys are as well. If you are, you know exactly what you need to do. You need to like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification button, and I will catch you in the next video.